Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the public portion of the Commission on Environmental Cooperation Council session. And I understand Martin, our chair of the Joint Public Advisory Committee, Gutierrez, will be setting the stage for us as we move forward this afternoon. Already, you can see visually that there are some changes in our approach, but I, for one, know I speak for all of the council members in saying how excited we are to kick off this part of our meeting as it opens the door to a real and we hope deeper dialogue with our stakeholders to hear from you and get your perspective on environmental issues of greatest import to you and your communities, how we are working to address and resolve those issues. We have a full agenda, so without further delay, Chairman Gutierrez, Martin, the floor is yours.
Gracias. Nuevamente, muchas gracias por estar aquí, bienvenidos. Esta ya, como decimos los mexicanos, ya la sentimos nuestra casa. Entonces, les doy una bienvenida a los que nos están viendo por la red. Es un placer estar compartiendo con ustedes y con los señores ministros una sesión más del Consejo de Nación Pública. Y quisiera empezar con informarles que hemos tenido, ustedes lo saben, 2 días de trabajo muy intensos, muy productivos, que han hecho una hermandad entre nosotros, creado una red y sobre todo entender que compartimos un solo espíritu, un mismo medio ambiente, mismas problemáticas. Señores ministros, quisiera hacerles entrega del documento producto del esfuerzo y talento de tanta gente que compartió estos días con nosotros. Ustedes vieron ya en qué consiste el documento, saben cuáles son los pasos que vamos a seguir y a nombre de todo el público de Norteamérica que estuvo vinculado, me permito entregarles el documento de trabajo. Pues bien, la sesión de la tarde va a estar dividida en 3 partes, en 3 escenarios distintos. El primero tiene que ver con las comunidades y ecosistemas saludables, donde vamos a escuchar una serie de proyectos y presentaciones. La segunda parte estará enfocada hacia el diálogo de comunidades resilientes, el trabajo de lo que hicimos, y el último va a ser un informe sobre un anuncio bien importante, un esfuerzo de trabajo de mucha gente, y del cual fue liderado obviamente por el Consejo, por los señores ministros, por la administradora Jackson y su equipo, que tiene que ver con la actualización del proceso de peticiones ciudadanas. Entonces, vamos a platicar parte del segmento sobre eso. Quisiera decirles que como resultado de este nuevo formato que tanto vieron ustedes el día de ayer como esto que trataremos de hacer aquí, tiene que ver mucho sí con el diálogo, pero tenemos que construir, dado el poco tiempo que tenemos, una serie de reglas y de formas de convivencia para el evento. La primera es que ustedes van a encontrar en cada una de las mesas al lado de ustedes unas fichas para formular preguntas. Yo les pediría que aquellos que no localicen sus fichas en este momento, levanten la mano para que el personal del secretariado pueda identificarlos, dejarles los documentos necesarios. Una vez que ustedes tengan formulado un comentario, una pregunta, levanten la mano para que se recojan y Evan, que va a ser quien va a conducir, nuestro director de la Comisión de Cooperación Ambiental, la segunda parte del evento, pues pueda conducir el diálogo con los señores ministros. Habiendo dicho esto, ¿nadie le falta hoja? Ok, parece que no. También las personas que nos están escuchando y viendo en el webcast, por favor formulen los comentarios y las preguntas en tiempo real para que también el personal lo conduzca de manera directa a Evan y se pueda integrar el diálogo con nuestro consejo. Habiendo dicho esto, quisiera comentarles que es muy grato el conocer los avances de todo el trabajo que hace la Comisión, y uno de estos tiene que ver con estos ejes temáticos. Ustedes los conocen, aquellos que no, son comunidades y ecosistemas saludables, transitar a economías de bajo carbono y enverdecer la economía o transitar a una economía cada vez más verde, responsable y que esto promueva un intercambio a favor del medio ambiente. Entonces, me gustaría presentarles a Troy Reader. Troy Reader es una persona que ha dedicado mucho de su vida, su talento, inclusive, déjenme les digo, que ha puesto su propia integridad en juego por apoyar a comunidades vulnerables en el Ártico. Entiendo que es una persona de muy alto rango. Por favor, adelante.
And I would like to hear what he has to say to us.
Yeah.
Is this good?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to start off by sharing some information about the respiratory health status of Alaska Native children. On the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta of Alaska, the area where we've been implementing the project in the last year, about 1 in 4 babies are hospitalized every year for acute respiratory infections alone. Over 50% of these children have physician-diagnosed reactive airway disease and asthma. These children also have among the highest rates of respiratory syncytial virus ever documented in the world. The only population that has similarly high rates are the Inuit in the Baffin region of Nunavut. There's also the highest rates of invasive pneumococcal disease ever documented. Bronchiectasis, which is a very serious lung condition, which often results in parts of the lungs having to be surgically removed, is still common in this area, even though it's basically disappeared from the more developed regions. And overall, about 68% of infant hospitalizations are related to respiratory problems. This is an epidemic. It's something that we need to address as public health officials. But fortunately, we have some new information that we can use to fight the battle. Recently, there's been new research that shows us that exposure to indoor air pollution is a risk factor for these conditions. And along with Alaska, there's also been research from indigenous areas of Canada and Mexico that shows us that it's a problem in those areas as well. It's a pretty simple relationship, really. Little kids with severe respiratory problems need clean air to breathe. So the goal of this project is to reduce the need for respiratory medical treatment among a very high-risk group of Alaska Native children by improving the air quality in their homes. We also recognize that this problem isn't just specific to Alaska Natives, but it's a problem for indigenous children all across the continent. So a second goal is to develop a model that can be replicated and implemented in other indigenous communities across North America. Our approach is a simple one. We evaluate the medical records of Alaska Native children. Our organization also operates the health system in Alaska, so we have access to this information. We identify children with the most severe and frequent respiratory problems. We assess their health condition and their home condition to see if we think there is potential for success. We perform targeted home remediation, such as installing or improving home ventilation systems, exchanging old leaky wood stoves with EPA-certified, more efficient models, mold and moisture abatement, education. And then we collect health data on lung health as well as air quality before and after the interventions to determine if we're making progress. And then we share this information with our partners from Mexico and Canada so that they can implement similar programs in their own countries. With this slide, I want to talk a little bit about the children we worked with in year one. We worked in 15 households, and there were a total of 67 children between the ages of 3 and 12 who lived there. Of course, there are children of other ages as well. The children in this age range, because of some basic physiological factors, are really the target of the program and what we use to evaluate success. 68% of those 67 children had severe respiratory problems. These are some of the children we worked with in year one. So now I want to talk about some of the homes that we worked in, some of the problems that we encountered, and some of the things that we did to fix the problem. These are a couple of pretty typical rural Alaskan homes. They're actually homes that we worked in. These homes are a little bit different. You might notice they're on stilts. This is permafrost, so if the homes are located directly on the ground, the soil will melt and the homes would sink in. So otherwise, they're pretty standard homes. The average home size was about 800 square feet. There were more than 8 occupants per home, and that level of occupancy is classified by HUD as extreme overcrowding. In this photo, there were 14 occupants in this 1,000 square foot home, and you can see the evidence of overcrowding here. All the bedrooms were full, so at night they would pull out these mattresses and there would be 2 and 3 children that would sleep on each one. The sleeping area of the child is very critical to their respiratory condition. They're down there on the ground where any kind of dirt and dust and particulates on the floor can be inhaled very easily. This is another example of the sleeping area. One of the children that we worked with actually slept here on the corner of this mattress. Some of these problems are actually pretty easy to fix. We're able to clean this up pretty easily, get them a little better sleeping area. Something else that I would note from this picture is there on the top center, that's the fresh air intake for this home, and you can tell that it's blocked by a coat. Heating fuel is about $10 per gallon in these communities, and people associate the free air exchange into their home with higher heating bills, so they try to disable it. Well, fresh air into their home is really critical for good air quality, so that's something that we need to address. Mold and moisture problems were abundant. Some of this we can fix, some we couldn't. What I want to illustrate with this photo, these 2 photos were taken by the same person using the same camera on the same day, but the photo on the right looks fuzzy. The difference here is the wood stove in the right photo. This would actually be your left. That wood stove was actually burning at the time where the other was not. So the photo isn't actually fuzzy. That room is filled with smoke. Those fine particulates can penetrate deep into the child's lungs and cause all kinds of respiratory problems. This photo shows one of the wood stoves that we actually replaced. This is an EPA certified low emission wood stove capable of producing about 60% reduction in PM 2.5 fine particulates. Hopefully you can tell which one is the new one. In addition to wood stoves, we found that many families were using these small diesel-powered heaters called Toyo stoves to heat their homes. We weren't expecting to have to replace any of these, but you can tell from the photo there at the bottom, it was pretty typical to find that the surfaces of these homes were covered with ash and soot, representing a pretty severe impact on air quality. So we ended up replacing some of these as well. I mentioned ventilation earlier. The vent that you see there on your left is actually plugged with a rag. The homeowners have disabled that to block the fresh air intake. The other one is one of the vents that we installed. That's called a Fresh 80, and it can be opened and closed by pulling on that drawstring. We gave residents a digital display showing the carbon dioxide level in their home. Carbon dioxide is a good indicator of the general air quality in the home. And we told them if the reading goes above a certain level, pull on that cord to open the vent and let in some fresh air. If it goes down to a certain level, then you can close the vent and save on heating fuel. This put the occupants in control of their own air quality status. It was really empowering, very successful. We also installed some range hoods. We didn't go in thinking that this was going to be important, but some of our early air quality testing showed us that not having a range hood above the stove surface there had a big impact on air quality. I should also mention that none of the 15 homes that we worked in had running water or flush toilets. So the trash can that you see there, that's actually the family's water supply. These are some of the local residents that performed the construction work for us. The Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium has good capacity to do construction in rural communities, but in this case, we took a different approach. Rather than us going out to do this work, we contracted with trained, and then oversaw local residents as they did the work. This gave them some marketable job skills and some temporary employment in villages that typically have more than 50% of the adults that are not in the workforce. Community resilience, it's a small step, but something that we can do. Now I'm going to share some of the results of what we learned in year one. I'll talk about that in terms of the impact on air quality and then child health. These results are all preliminary at this point. So for air quality, after the intervention we saw a 45% decrease in carbon monoxide, again, a good general indicator of air quality, a 65% decrease in volatile organic compounds, and a 49% decrease in fine particulates in homes that received a new wood stove and burned wood before and after the interventions. I should also mention here, though, something about the magnitude of the problem. Take benzene, for example. Sure, we saw a 65% decrease in volatile organic compounds, but what that really means is before we started the work, the level of benzene, on average in these 15 homes, was 30 times higher than what we would consider a typical or a safe level. After our work, the level is still 10 times higher than what we would hope it would be. So there's still some more work to do here. We've made some improvements, but it's still way too high. What about impact on children's health? Well, first of all, what I should say is there's still more work to be done here, and there's going to be some more time before we can make some sound science conclusions. But what we know so far is that in our before and after questionnaire surveys, caregivers have reported fewer clinic visits, fewer hospitalizations, and fewer missed days of school due to respiratory problems since we've done the work. Now, what we need to do now is we're going to review the medical record to validate the self-reported information, and we're going to compare these children to a control group made up of children from also within these same villages that did not receive the interventions. So that's to come. I'm going to close up here. There's so many people I need to thank. Orlando Cabrera with the CEC, just a true partner in every sense of the word. Our project officer, thank you. Martha Berger with the EPA Children's Health Program. Our friends in Mexico and Canada. We talk about this in terms of Alaska sharing information. It's gone both ways. Some of the air quality sampling techniques that we're using here in Alaska were shared with us from our Mexican and Canadian counterparts. We're each learning from the other. Our friends with the Centers for Disease Control and HUD, of course our tribal partners. There's just a lot of pieces to doing this, and it's going to take a collaborative effort. And I'm going to end with this slide, and I'm going to go ahead and read this. This is a statement from a 1948 letter from Public Health Service sanitary engineer working in Alaska, Mr. Richard Green. I'm going to go ahead and read this now. Native housing in its present state is utterly inadequate. I feel little can be done to improve this until we have a more fundamental knowledge and understanding of the complex factors involved. It seems very probable that any dwelling which will prove satisfactory for these harsh climates will involve a radical departure in design from anything we now have. It would not appear to be going too far to say that little progress in the attack on tuberculosis in the Eskimo population can be made until some way is found to improve the physical conditions of their dwellings. The point that I want to make from here is we've been talking about the topics of respiratory health, indigenous people, and indoor air quality for about 60 years now, and we still have the problems that I discussed earlier. So the point that I want to make, and I've written at the top of this slide, the time is now. I feel really encouraged that by the collective collaboration of these 3 countries in North America, we can start making some solid progress. And then I'm just going to end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Commander Ritter, for that excellent presentation and that call to action at the end, which obviously comes from your firsthand work with these Native children and their families in the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta. The touching photographs, I think, are ones we won't soon forget. and the resilience and self-reliance that comes with teaching people how to address their own health. So these kinds of engagements with indigenous communities is something that this council has said is extremely important. They're the themes and work of each of our governments, but also our work at CEC. So I thank you for helping to demonstrate what can and must be done. I'll open it up for my fellow council members. Minister Kent.
Well, yes, thank you. Very impressive early outcomes, and I think the analysis is going to be even more conclusive. It's interesting to see the parallel between this and the broader initiative, the Clean Cook Stove initiative that our countries are engaged in as well, right across the developing world, but as we've seen in our developed countries, in some of the communities where through various forms of neglect and outdated technology, with very simple applications of new technology and health precautions, great achievements and accomplishments can be made. So congratulations to you, and I know on behalf of the Canadians that worked with you on this program, we're proud to have been associated with your project.
Thank you. The Canadians have some very sophisticated air monitoring capabilities that have really helped us.
Los comentarios que yo tendría con respecto a este proyecto no son muy útiles a los tres países, no solamente en el caso de la población de Alaska. Para el caso de México, se tiene el plan de terminar 400,000 estufas con ahorro de energía, que básicamente le brindan a la población no solamente cortar menos árboles, sino mejorar la calidad del aire adentro de las viviendas. En México se estima que las mujeres que cocinan todo el día con un fuego a cielo abierto, un fogón, es el equivalente a fumar 10 cigarrillos diarios adentro de la casa. Entonces, con esas más de 300,000 estufas que se han terminado el año pasado, estamos incrementando el nivel de vida de esta población.
And improving the lifestyle of these families, and I acknowledge the fact that this is a very interesting piece of work. Thank you.
Thank
Gracias.
you. Thank you. Even perhaps we can have some interaction from our audience or from...
Yes, thank you. Well, as it happens, we do have a couple of questions. They're both to you, Administrator Jackson, but I will welcome any responses from anyone else on this particular topic. They are somewhat specific, however. And the first question is from our Facebook to Administrator Jackson, from Mary Powell Cioccoletti of the United States. And she asks or says that we need regulations to limit wood-burning pollution, which is severe in many communities. And her question is quite simply, why is this not given immediate priority?
It is not that it is not being given priority. It's that for much of the work that we do domestically, the states have really taken the lead on reducing and moving towards more efficient and cleaner wood-burning stoves. A federal law or regulation requiring such a thing might arguably be more than is needed because it's a fairly regional specific problem. And states from Vermont all the way over to Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, all the way up to the Northeast, and some states in the South have taken on this challenge. Obviously, the North is more of a concern when it comes to home heating. So EPA continues to support that work as well as to put out some national standards that undergird and form the basis of that work.
Good topic, or speaking of the distinction between federal and state law, another question from here in Louisiana, from Ann Rolfs, who's a member of the Louisiana Bucket Brigades, is saying, this meeting is being held in your home state, a state the EPA Inspector General has described as having a culture of defending industry. We compared this situation to the state's failure to implement civil rights laws in the 1960s. What can we do to convince the EPA to take back delegation of environmental laws from Louisiana.
Thank you. Thank you, Bucket Brigade, and thank you, Ann, for the question. You know, EPA's role under federal laws is to implement and or to work with states who implement those laws. Louisiana has accepted delegation for most, not, I don't think every one of the environmental laws. Our strong preference, always, is to work with a state to increase the accountability and work that they do, whether it's enforcement, permitting, or other work as well. We're certainly aware that we have now public petitions in hand to review and remove delegation for some, not all of Louisiana's authorities. And it would be wrong of me to comment on that legal process because EPA is obligated to do it. I think at the end of the day, it's simply the same as I've said nationally. EPA or a state's job is to level the playing field so that there is no reward for bad actors. When so much of the industry is trying to do a better job of being sustainable, we should not disable that work by enabling people who are trying to skirt the system to allow them to continue to pollute and have what can be a significant, if not devastating, impact on human health. So we'll continue to do our job. It's still my hope that we'll do it with the state, and that, of course, is part of the review process that's going on right now.
There's really only one last point, and it's really more of a comment, and it's concerning the point that was raised by our presenter, in that Native peoples in the Arctic North America suffer very high rates of lung issues due to bad air, and that this is a solvable problem, and it's very encouraging that this work is occurring.
This is what we would call a winnable battle. I think we can make some progress on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, children's health issues are so important in all of our countries, and they're the thing that links communities. The issues in this community are poignant because it's the simple act of trying to eat or stay warm in frigid temperatures. But no community should have to accept pollution as the byproduct of economic progress. And that's really where I believe this leads. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Commander.
Thank you.